Thank you, Jose Luis, and thank you all for coming so late after a very busy day all morning to come and hear us talk. It's wonderful to see so many of you interested. I was saying earlier, I tried to talk Bill out into reducing our PowerPoint, but he thinks you need to know everything we have to say, and we need to know it is. So, thank you for your patience. Bill and I have, I was thinking while we've been here, listening to all of you, because you've all come up with some kind of innovation and some sort of disruptive thing that you think is really important. And I think after I heard your thing this morning, that all of us are engaging in traditional forms which are stubborn. The textbook, the lecture, the exam at the end, the ministers and their kind of mandates and things they demand of us. So when we come together like this in a conference like this, and things about how do we prepare people for the future, which is not about what the past needed to do. I mean, the past needed to have the architectures, the traditional architectures, to produce certain kinds of citizens, certain kinds of workers, certain kinds of individuals. But we know that the gap between what happens in formal education and ordinary everyday life for students and everybody is getting bigger. And so we're here together to consider how we close that gap. How do we make what happens in formal education kind of prepare people for what is happening in our personal lives first, and secondly, of course, the issue of inclusion and justice, because that traditional model didn't care about anything like that. It didn't care about social emotional learning. It didn't care about inclusivity. It didn't care about anything except turn the page, instructional sequences, a test at the end, and out the door, and it's your bad luck if you can't survive in the world. Right? And that's the model, that's the traditional model. And you have come here from all over the world, and each one of you have got that model in your country. So how did it happen? Was it colonial? What was it? It's there everywhere. And all of you, when you come to this conference, are struggling against that, because you realize there is something we have to do all the time, and for every generation, which prepares our learners for a world that is fairer and more just and inclusive and saves the planet as well as each other, because I think the planet is suffering. In this place, not only do they ride bikes, but you can't get plastic bottles of water. If this country can do it, why can't other countries do it? Right? So, Bill, are you ready? Oh, I can keep talking. But we as educators, and what we're going to share with you now is our trajectory, where Bill and I are today. Like as we said, 35 years ago, we started this conference, and I'll tell you why. Our Department of Education, responding to a fashion, put out a book about literacy to all schools that said, you don't have to teach grammar and you don't have to teach spelling. Because it was a fad then. What are you talking about? How can you say that? So we created the first conference like this, where we brought in the practitioners and politicians and administrators to say we need repertoires, right? There's no single solution to pedagogy. There's no single solution to literacy. If it's true that we have classes that are diverse, learners that are diverse in complex ways, then we have to be, as educators, researchers in a way, and to have repertoires to address the individual, the group, the subject area. So we formed the first we created a letterhead, we just made it up, we called it Learn, put all the names of the academics we had, and put out a message and had a conference. And we managed to force the government to call back those volumes, and then to paste over that saying, you may teach grammar and spelling. It works. It works if you come together as a community and intervene. And so we learned that lesson, and we've been trying to kind of continue in that way. And I know that each of you, in your own way, at least from the presentations that I heard, are trying to intervene in a way in order to create a society that respects what the individual is, what the society needs, and what the planet needs. Are we done, Bill?
We are. It's a great to see. And by the way, Mary made this funny comment about grammar, and strangely, we're going to get on to grammar in a while. We're talking about generative AI, but we're going to get on to grammar. So we, all those years ago, we'll return to grammar after eventually. You got more to say?
Yes, I want you to go.
Oh, okay. There we go. See, we've coordinated this very effectively.
Right, so I'm not allowed to walk past here, I forgot about that. Okay, so there's 3 parts to our presentation, right? It's quite long and complex. And if you know us, you know that we're academics, we're teachers, but we're constantly researchers. And we think all educators need to be researchers in informal and formal ways, because you're always going to be thinking of what the needs are of the moment, right? So we are researchers, and what we teach, we research, and you'll see how. So there's 3 parts. We're going to talk about the rise of platform pedagogies with the arrival of generative AI. What does that mean now for what we do from kindergarten right through to higher ed? And the second part is the case study of what we have tried to do, right? I'm going to give you one small example. I think you heard this morning that people think you can do anything at the moment and the future's going to be X, Y, and Z. But we think you have to do what's possible and you have to test what's possible. And it might be small, but it's a demonstration of what's ethical, or what's achievable, and what works for our students. So Bill's going to talk about platform pedagogies and artificial intelligence. I'm going to talk about our case study, what we're doing in our own university with our own students. And then we're going to talk about the future and learning, and we'll kind of do it together. So I'll hand over to Bill now, and he will give you a little bit of history, really, about how we've come to be where we are and the significance of it. Bill.
So I'm going to start with the slides that Mary told me to cut out. Because we're both actually trained as historians, and we always like his history is to understand where we came from, but also history is full of some really great stories. So when we're talking about platform pedagogies, the idea that we can build mechanical relationships between a learner and a machine doing some teaching is not at all a new idea. This is B.F. Skinner, the famous behaviourist who built this teaching machine, patented it, in fact, and it was a commercial disaster. It was purely mechanical, and it was called Didact, which is kind of funny and interesting. But in a way, what's more interesting than this machine is this machine here. So we're Australians, but we're now at the University of Illinois, and the world's first computer-mediated learning system was this system called Plato, with all the capital letters, stands for some kind of acronym or other. And this is Ted Nelson's view, the person who did the whole, the famous computer magazine. This is his diagram of what Plato did. And we've actually written the history of Plato, if you want to read the story, it's a really great story. Now, this in fact is the first platform-based pedagogy. So what it was a mainframe computer with a whole series of terminals. And in a way, it presaged what happens later on with platforms and cloud computing. So the irony is this system, which was built between 1959, finally closed down in 1976, was destroyed by the personal computer, which you had at home on your desk. But the wheels turn full circle. We're back to this environment where we have platforms. And what's very interesting about this is this was the first time, firstly, there's a keyboard. This is, by the way, a later version from the 70s, early 70s. They invented the plastic screen because, before that, computers just had cards that were just a calculation. But if this is going to do education, there has to be a visual interface. So the people who designed this invented the plasma screen. This was the first place where language was communicated person to person. So the students at U of I, using these different terminals off the mainframe, were talking to each other. and they created an application called Talkomatic, which was the first human communication. So what's kind of really interesting for us, not only is this a platform pedagogy from 1959, but these foundational things, a visual interface, carrying language computer to computer, human social connections via computers, which what's now social media and the lot. This was actually all invented ancillary to an educational application. So, you know, we often pick up tools which are created for all sorts of other tools for other purposes, you know, adapting to education. But the original things happen in education. The first emojis and also the first computer-based music as well, multimodality. So it's a great, read the article, it's a great story. So what I want to talk about now is moving forward to this moment is I want to talk about generative AI. And I'm going to talk about it historically, but also technically as well, if you can bear with me. So firstly, it's uniquely reconstituted digital artifacts, right? So otherwise known as cheating, otherwise known as, you know, all the other stuff that we're now terrified of because, you know, the work the students got. Who knows whether they created it or whether the technology did. But just to unpack the technology, to deconstruct it for a second, there are two distinct components of this generative AI. One is historically a technology called the chatbot, and the other is the large language model. And they're actually two quite different things which fit together in an interesting way. But neither of these are new. So in fact, the first chatbot was created here by Joseph Weisbaum at the who was a professor at MIT, and it was a chatbot called Eliza. And what it did, it used Rogerian psychology to ask questions of somebody, and they were just open-ended questions, but it built programmed responses based on the questions, right? So it was kind of a, you know, it was the machine as a psychoanalyst. This is a real text, and actually one kind of apocryphal story about this moment was he got his secretary to do it, and she was going through and using the program, and at a certain point she asked him to leave the room, because that was the point at which the machine had become the equivalent of an analyst. That's what it was designed to be. Now, this is important for us now, because in a sense, every time we interact with generative AI, it's being an analysis, and it's a dialogical relationship. So particularly now, if you look at the latest iterations of generative AI, it keeps asking questions because your original prompts weren't quite good enough, right? And it keeps pushing you forward. So it's got this kind of dialogical component. But the point I want to make here is that this is not new. This is 1966. Now, I'm going to say something contradictory in a moment, which is there are some aspects of it which are radically new, but this basic part is not. The second part, which is not new, is the large language model bit. Who's this person? Do you know him? Well, you should. Again, this is perhaps a tragic University of Illinois story. He got his PhD, University of Illinois. I went on to earn a massive amount of money using statistical language analysis. So this is the beginning of the idea that the way we deal with language is just by statistical analysis of a corpus, right? And his boss, his name's Robert Mercer, by the way. You know the name? Doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you who he is in a second. His boss said to him one day, whenever we fire a linguist, the system gets better. So we just don't think about how language works. Just do statistical analysis of how words fit together, which is exactly what generative AI does as a technology as well. So the sequel is, and the reason why it's important, is he becomes fabulously wealthy and decides in 2016 that he will put a lot of money into the Trump campaign, but not just money, intellectual effort. So he becomes the owner of Cambridge Analytica, which builds incredibly finely grained profiles of everybody and puts out 60,000 different Facebook ads a day, depending on your profile, right? So this is applying this technology. Forget about the Russians, by the way. This is applying the technology for a political purpose. So he's one of the great evil geniuses of modern time, but using what's called statistical language analysis, essentially. So I said we're going to keep it grammar later on. We are. This is an absolute rejection of language having any structure at all. It's about simply the statistical relationship of words. So this becomes, we know this, a problem for education. What comes, the highest form of this stuff now is this large language models, which are one of these components of generative AI. And it's a problem, is the work that the students submitted really their work? What are they using it for? In fact, they're using it for a lot of interesting, good things, actually summarising things, proofreading things, a whole lot of stuff, which is not necessarily bad, but we don't know as teachers who did the work, which parts of the work are theirs. But look, the good news is there's a pretty straightforward solution to this, and here it is. So this is classical education, by the way, what's the definition of learning? Definition of learning is long-term memory. And the definition of long-term memory is everything until the day after the exam. Right? So, but it's not social, it's cognitive, it's not about practical experience, it's not about working together with other people, it's not recognizing the social origins of your sources, which is referencing and so on. It's simply about long-term memory. Okay, so if that solution is good enough, we can close down for the day. Otherwise, we'll move on. So what I want to do now briefly, just to finish this first section, is do an analysis of what generative AI is and isn't and how it doesn't work, or how it works and doesn't work in interesting ways. So one of the things about my life is that I know an unhealthy amount of information about the Peloponnesian Railway, right? So we have a house in Greece, and I'm a bit of a trained person. So what I did is I said to and these are my photos on the left, it's a ruin now, right? And I said to the GPT, this was 3.5, I think. It's getting better with time for a whole lot of reasons. Write an essay on the history of the Peloponnesian Railway with references. So this is the classic 5-page, 5-paragraph, 6-paragraph, whatever it is, school essay. And what we've got is all sorts of classic school essay techniques. However, blah, 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 in conclusion, blah, blah, blah. So it's picked up, it's a good genre machine. But a couple of things here, decommissioned in the 1970s, no, it closed in 2011. So that's actually seriously wrong by 41 years. And then and these are, by the way, some ruined locomotives and trains along the way, which I quite like. And the references, by the way, are rubbish. They look pretty impressive, don't they? They've got URLs and they've got whatever, but there are no such references. If there were, I would have found them. So one of the things is, this is a remarkably clever technology which takes a whole pile of stuff out there in corpora and recomposes them in plausible ways. But these are then 5 deep fundamental problems. Now, what they're doing now, it's called processes of fine-tuning, is trying to compensate for this, but this will be always intrinsic at the bottom of the technology. Intrinsic problems, which no matter how much fine-tuning you do, will always be there as deep problems. First thing is sourcing, we just saw that. That gets it wrong. It's called hallucination, by the way. Let's go back to Rogerian psychology. We've given it a kind of a psychological thing. No, it's not. The facts are wrong. They've just been invented. It's not an hallucination at all. What it does, it doesn't have any, what we do in education is we have theoretical frames called science or literacy, or something or other, which are meta languages to describe our work. It doesn't have any of that. It's just simply about the collocation of words. Ethics. Now, these machines have become pretty socially well managed because they've employed a lot of people in Kenya and India and various other places to take out all the swear words. And whenever you ask for a recipe for suicide or a recipe for how to make a dirty bomb, it's all there in the large language model, but it's been filtered out. You can't get it. And by the way, the business of working your way around the filters is called a jailbreak. So clever people can still get to this stuff by this process of prompting called the jailbreak. The other thing, though, just like the Rogerian psychologists, it's nice to you, right? It wants to keep you in the conversation. Whereas in education, what we often want is critical feedback. So what we have to do if we're to use these in education, and we'll show you examples of this in a moment, we have to, inject a critical component. Otherwise, it's going to be basically affirmative, and it's been programmed to be that. Now, what I've said so far is that, okay, behind the chatbots, 1966, statistical language models, 1960s, 1970s, they're old technologies. But also there are some things about this particular moment, the generative AI moment. And by the way, the key turning point is one article in 2017, if you want to know. So this is how recent the darn thing is. So what it's a group of 8 authors at Google Brain who worked out a way to be more statistically efficient about, there are 5 billion words in the corpus, let's say, and if you multiply 5 billion by 5 billion, it's an impossible number of relationships between all those words. They worked out a way to be economical, statistically economical about dealing with the relationships, and it's called attention. It's paying attention to particular relationships as opposed to all. So the article's called Attention is All You Need, which is quite a cute name for the article. So it's one particular breakthrough, Google Brain 2017. So what's important about this is that, we know that technologies do influence the way in which we communicate learning, literacy, and whatever. And these were really important moments. So if you've got a European bank, it's Gutenberg 1450. If you've got an East Asian bank, Pishing invents movable type in 1039, although it didn't take off the way Gutenberg did. So it's about the mechanical reproduction of text, right? But this is actually a first, which is the mechanical production of unique, meaningful text. The machine is creating something which is meaningful for us as human beings. That's actually huge. So I can tell you that it comes from chatbots, comes from statistical language analysis, but the minute we have this, it's a really huge. And by the way, this is a build image. If you want the reference down the right-hand side, it took me about an hour to create that with multiple prompts. So, and we were giving Mary gave a keynote in Greek the other day, hence all the Greek references you see. And this, by the way, is Unicode spewing out of the who's this person? Don't know. Anyhow, but one of the important things behind this, and this is this last statement, is that the last 300 words I said have never been said before. If you've got a little 3-year-old who says 300 words, they've recombined the world through language in a way that's never been done before because they have certain combinatorial. This thing's going to send us slightly crazy, isn't it? I think it's actually the HDMI cable. I think it's a hardware issue.
Do you like what you're saying?
No, it doesn't like what I'm saying, but okay. So in other words, what we've got is we've got infinite combinatorial possibilities, and the methods in which humans do it as opposed to machines are quite different. So I'm going to actually, and that's kind of a way of restating that principle. And as I said, going back 2 slides, this is the first machine that's been able to do this. So this is a kind of an important thing. So let me just say, okay, how does this work? Right. So I'm going to talk about it as a text technology. And by text, I mean written text. I'm going to define what that is on the right. So what written text consists of is graphemes, which are these kind of visual symbolic representations, some of which, a very few of which are phonemes, but nearly all of which are ideographs. And what we have out there in the digital world now is this a single universal scripting system, actually. I don't think people often don't realize the significance of it. There is only one scripting system now, and it's a thing called Unicode, which includes, in the latest version, 149,000 characters. So that includes thousands of emojis now, because they're part of this world, which are clearly ideographs. And it includes includes linear A, which people can't even read yet. So, so text is that which can be expressed in Unicode, which includes math and code. So what's interesting is that in the world of literacy, math and code are now in the same technical space, which is what you're doing in math and in literacy is it's the 2-dimensional array of these graphemes, right? So that's essentially what we're defining text as. But also, the generative AI doesn't work at that level. By the way, behind every Unicode character is a series of 0s and 1s. So ultimately, it's a binary notation. Everything's binary notation, and if you can't get it through binary notation, it can't be done. Is it going to come up again? Yes. I don't know why it's doing this, because I'm not touching it even. But also, generative AI doesn't work at the Unicode level. It works at the token level. So, and one of the interesting things about this, and this is kind of a theoretical point, is that it works with semantic units. So I'm going to talk about the word walk in a moment. Walk is a thing called a token. Walking is 2 tokens. Walked is 2 tokens. So, so what happens is the boundaries of the units, the machine doesn't know anything meaningful, and the boundaries of those units have been created by humans, which is called the spacebar. It's called, but in the case of breaking walked into walked ED, that's a process called stemming, which humans have done. So one of the things is the machine actually knows nothing semantic at all. And to the extent that it's semantic, it works with things called tokens. So this is just me trying to give a kind of a technical explanation of what's going on. Now, the other thing which is really interesting is that it's multimodal. You saw that beautiful image that, well, I think it's a beautiful image, but the machine did it, not me, so I'm not praising myself. But it's only secondary so. This is only a text machine. So what happens is that out there in the world, we've got billions of images which have been labeled. This is a mountain with snow and sky and whatever, and it reads enough of them and it knows, it's able to apply those tokens, sky and whatever, to the image. And then you can only generate the image with a textual prompt. So in terms of multimodality, the irony is that we put text back, well, text circumstantially happens to be the center of this technology, and the multimodal stuff is pretty amazing, but it's only what Mary and I would call a transpositional relationship between text and other forms like image. Now, I'm going to actually I'm getting to the grammar point, and then I'm going to hand over to Mary, so I'm nearly kind of done with my part of the story. I'm going to take 3 sentences now. So this is the first one. I walk to work. So I generated this image from Leonardo. So this is me fancifully walking to work. That looks like me, doesn't it? It looks like the University of Illinois in the distance there. And then I walk the dog. Now we happen to have a standard poodle, and he doesn't look as fancy as that. But and I got the colour right, and that doesn't really look like me. But I do walk on a country path, which is not like an English path, it's an American forest path. But doesn't matter. Yeah, this was me fancifully, sorry. Walking the dog. I can't go on like get the next image up. Okay, so then here's another sentence. I'm going to parse these sentences, and I want to talk grammatically about it. And then I walk the prisoners to their cells. Right, so these are 3 different types of walk. Now, in fact, what we know as humans, these are 3 very different types of walk. And the interesting thing is how the computer, or how generative AI knows the 3 different types of walk. So if I'm doing regular school grammar, this is the grammar point, it's all past tense, walk past tense, right? That's what it all is, and it looks similar. But in fact, when we do other things, more sophisticated grammatical things, we do transitivity, case, voice, and mood. Little kids do this all the time because it's part of their cognitive apparatus. That's how they do it. So, but when the machine does this, right, it's looking at the relationship of a particular walk with the words around it. And in fact, there are 10,000 versions of that token walk in there. So when they say there's 7 billion parameters, it's because it has a vocabulary of 7 billion words, because it's meant to differentiate thousands, not just a few, many thousand different types of walk. So, for example, when I say, I walk the student to the principal, it's a similar kind of thing which can be reconstructed grammatically in that way. Now, the machine doesn't know what it's doing. It's just got billions of parameters. But the really important thing is that no human mind could have billions of parameters, and you wouldn't want to have billions of parameters. What we do is we order the world grammatically, right? And we order the world around these kind of semantic primitives, which means that walk is a verb, ed is in the past, right? So we have these apparatuses, which is also how little kids rebuild the world every day through language. So some kind of difficult kind of theoretical points here. There's no grammar in generative AI, just statistical relations. Sorry, folks, I don't know what to do with this thing. Wait again. Okay, let's back on again. So this is a quote that we like to validate. So the work that Mary and I do is, a descendant of Halliday's systemic functional linguistics. A grammar is a resource for meaning the critical function of semiotic which we pursue our everyday life. A grammar is a theory of human experience. The sentence is a theory of human experience. I, subject, walk the dog. It's a theory of, and then I can change, I walk the giraffe, or, these things are all substitutable because we have this kind of set of semantic primitives, which we're going to call the grammar, which is the way in which we order this material world. Now, that doesn't mean it's in our mind. It means it's in the world, and we've learned that from experience, and we built it through experience as well. Not that we're great fans of Chomsky in a whole lot of ways, but in a way, Chomsky becomes relevant again. Now, he wants to do bioreductionism and all sorts of problematic things, but nevertheless, one's ability to produce recognized objects is not based on notions of statistical approximation. He was able to say that in 57 when people were dreaming such things, and it's in syntactic structures, which is pretty foundational. So here are the differences, and it's a kind of a difficult slide with a set of summaries there about what's going on. It's empirical and statistical. It's 7 billion parameters, or whatever they say the parameters are, which is those relations. And what it does, it generates text by brute statistical force. All it's got there is zeros and ones, and it generates stuff meaningful through this way. What we do grammatically is the functional classification of morphemes. So meaning is a repertoire of linguistic semantic primitives. Meanings are embodied experience in the material world. They're not just, Chomsky will say it's just in your brain and that you're projecting, it's a kind of, people know Kant, it's a Kantian kind of argument. But what we're saying is that these are things which we build from our experience, and little kids build them from our experiences at the very, very beginning. I'll just keep on going, and if it fails again, we'll do something. So look, Mary and I have been trying to think at a high level about what to build a system, a grammatical system. Our latest version is this. We've been doing it for years, where we built this kind of transpositional grammar stuff here, where we say that there are kind of 5 top-level questions you could be asking about image. You could be asking about text. There we go again. I think it might be the HDMI connection. I've got USB-C as well, if you want to try it. No, this is just how. That's just how, yeah. So we can try USB-C. Yeah, I'll get Mary to say something in a second because we're nearly going on to the second section. So anyhow, let me go one step beyond this now. What's looming on the horizon? I'll jump across to the next slide and then go back to this other slide about contextual AI as well. So in fact, what we've done is we've built this kind of 2-dimensional schema where we're talking about these different forms of text, right? And we're calling them meaning forms and functions. So the reason why we have these 5 questions down the side about reference, agency, structure, context, and by the way, each of those has got a relatively simple question that's being asked about it, which is, what's it about, what's happening, how does it hang together, how's it connected with things around it, what's it for? So ultimately, these are relatively simple functional questions, which we can ask of image and space and object, body, sound, and speech. We can ask of all of those, and we actually make text and speech very different because our argument is text happens in 2-dimensional array in space, and speech happens in time. They're just such fundamentally different existential things. And to think that literacy is simply the transliteration of speech to text, it's actually very, very different. And with all these other mediations, we can do something which is more multimodal and more connected. But this is meant to be just an analysis of what large language models do. They do this stuff hugely. I'll talk about contextual AI in a second because they don't do context, right? They do not do context. All they've got is corpora, which is historical. But I'm going to talk about context when I go back to the previous slide. And we can do sentiment analyses which try and pick up, what people's interests are as well. But then they've got these kind of multimodal connections. And what's interesting with generative AI is all the characteristics, features of speech get stripped out. There's a lot of meaning in those things. Prosody, dialect, embodiment, temporality, a whole pile of things which get stripped out of. And so again, this is an argument about the intrinsic limitations. So, and again, here is a kind of another version of that same thing, and we can use generative AI very productively up here, but down in these things, and I'm going to jump back to contextual AI, there's enormous potential in terms of linking those things up. So again, this is a kind of a difficult argument. This is an example of contextual AI. So you might have seen the launch of Apple Intelligence the other week. The stuff which is on your computer and stuff which is in your pocket can actually give a whole lot of information about context which LLMs never have. They can't, all they can operate is of historical corpora. Now, our argument is a really powerful opportunity, which is just landed on our doorstep now, is linking contextual AI and generative AI in learning analytics. And Mary's going to show you some of what we're trying to do in that space now. And I think that's actually all I have to say. Sorry, that's a lot. I should have cut some of those slides out, shouldn't I? That's what Mary says.
I want to go back to that one. I want to go back to that one. Why do I want to go back to that one? If we were talking to you last year or the year before, we'd be saying something different. I mean, this world is changing as we're living it. Some of the things that Bill has shared with us is us trying to understand what it means as educators, as linguists, as people who are trying to help others understand. But we want to come back. Those of you who now work on multimodality and multiliteracies know that what we said then, right, was that the most revolutionary thing that happened after the printing press was that you could go click, 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 and alphabetical literacy, symbolic literacy, visual literacy, sound literacy, babies can do it. It's the most revolutionary thing that's happened in the production of meaning, right? That's what we said then, multiliteracies. And we said, well, if that's the case, if you can produce it, if you don't need different technology and different tools in order to produce meaning across different modes, then we need a grammar that can deal with all those modes equally. And that's why we put the modes at the top and then try to find a grammar that you could apply equally to all those modes. So for all of them, you could say, what are they referred to? What agency is in it? What structure? What's the context that helps it? What interest or ideology is behind it? So we thought it was important then, when we did this work, right, to emphasize the significance of multimodality and multiliteracy, right? But now there's been another shift which has taken us back to trying to figure out what generative AI does with language, because it's turned all those representations of the modes into tokens, and has a bag of words, right? A huge bag of words that are collocated after you put your prompt in. So we've had to move ourselves. We've had to say, okay, this is still relevant, but where are we going to now? And of course, when we wrote this grammar, we talked about transpositions. We thought meaning shifts from my hand to my voice to PowerPoint, and that happens all the time now in multimodality. And so you have to kind of trace those things as well. So I just wanted to say that just to kind of remind ourselves and kind of share with you that even in our own journey now, we have had to come and face some very new things about how we incorporate the way in which technology influences our lives as educators. So my part is to talk about what we've done. Now, some of you know, well, all of you know, because you work in Scholar, all of you work in Scholar, Common Ground Scholar, and we invented that platform because we wanted to be able to address the issues of our time, the affordances of the digital, right, and multimodality. That's why we did it, right? We created it a lot of years ago, and now we're finding it useful for kind of other purposes. But we wanted to be, and I think we heard this morning about the colonization of cultures and that represented through education. But we wanted to have an inclusive space. We wanted to create a platform that allowed for engagement of anyone across all the modes, right? Across all the ancestry or across all the cultural values or whatever. So how do you create a platform? The platforms we have, you know, Google, what's it called, Moodle and Canvas, you know, upload, download, do a quiz, are not for today, and they're not for the values that each of you have talked about, right? In fact, they take pedagogy backwards, not forwards. You have to add captures, you have to kind of manipulate them, but we created a space for ubiquitous, anytime, anywhere learning that was allowed engagement across modes and across backgrounds. We wanted it though also to be collaborative because we're social, right? We wanted the space to allow for collaboration. It's an affordance to allow for us reflecting on what we do. And of course, as I said, to be a multimodal space and a help economy. We do believe that we have to help each other in the creation of knowledge and in the solving of problems. The days of the great white man or the great white woman that solve the problems of the world are not here, right? In fact, most of the great men around us are dangerous, unfortunately. So we did want, you know, to create this health economy. And of course, we wanted to be able to do just-in-time evaluation. Assessment is everything. Assessment is the tail that wags the dog. Whatever the assessment is in your domain determines what curriculum you have and what you do. But we wanted to have an analytics that was just in time and gave feedback to an individual when they needed it. Not at the end when they said you're a B plus, you're an A, you're a failure, you're a success. You know, what's the point of having that kind of an assessment if you're on about equality and inclusion, etc. So we wanted to have learning analytics, and I'll show that to you. And of course, the portfolio, and I heard a woman talk earlier about the importance of portfolios. In this space, we create portfolios for every participant. You get portfolios if you want, all our students get portfolios. We can accumulate records of everything that we do for all sorts of purposes. And of course, we wanted as educators to create spaces for us to share with each other. You know, I've done a lot of work on professional learning and professional development, and I think somebody else gave a paper like this. The best professional learning is when you learn from each other. All the front-end learning and all the rules and you must do this, you must do this, you must do that, it comes in one ear and goes out the other ear. But when you share, or I did this and it didn't work, I did this and it did work. You know, that it's very important as professionals that we understand that we as professionals learn from each other, and so do our learners, right? And so do our learners. So now here we are at Generative AI. What's Bill and Mary going to do about this, right? So we've created this platform. We've talked about multi-literacies and multimodalities. Now we have our students using it, and I'm reading this stuff. I can see my students whose first language is not English, they're giving me papers that have come from AI, and I can tell because it's dull and boring in the first instance, right? Because it, as Bill said, it has no theory, it has no particular sources, it's a bag of words that just collocates around the prompts that you put in it. So it's not hard to tell when somebody's used it to give you an essay, really, if you're a linguist anyway. So what have we done? Right, well, the first thing, and it's important, we've created an analytical tool, which you all use, don't they?
No.
Oh, no, you don't.
It's there, you can use it, it's called memory spec, yeah.
In our course, we teach students at master's level and doctoral level, and undergraduate level. We created an analytical tool which assesses the student as you go. Every single student has one of these. We call it an aster plot, you know, the flower that has different petals. And every single petal, and you've got the analysis at the end there, you know, the list, you can click into it and you can find exactly what you've been asked to do. There are no tricks in assessment, no kind of trying to fool you. You know exactly what's required of you, and as you progress, you can see each one of these petals going from 0 to whatever point you want to do. And we say to all our students, you can get any grade you like. There's no bell curve. There's no some of you are okay, some of you terrific, some of you are ordinary. No. You know exactly what's expected of you, and you can move to any level that you want to move. And also, we don't have deadlines, because if you have past deadlines, some people don't always meet them. So we're flexible about deadlines. But the most important thing about this, and you don't have to have the sections we have, but we chose for our students to, because it's online teaching, not face-to-face teaching, online, 3 domains. One domain is knowledge. You always evaluate for knowledge, right? So there are a number of petals that relate to your production of knowledge in that particular course. But you're online, so we have to know how much engagement, how much focus you have online, right? So it's not just, you know, you're not doing it and getting somebody else to do it, or just doing the knowledge part. Online, you have to be able to grade and recognize the effort put in participating. Why? Level 3, we call it health, section 3. We require all our learners in our courses to help each other achieve the pedal group. So we don't have the concept of cheating or anything like that. We want our learners to help each other, to cite each other. So we grade help. Right? We don't just ask that you collaborate, you actually grade it. The quality of your feedback, the amount of your feedback. So you do an evaluation of what other people give you, and you can respond, and that all gets graded in time as you're progressing. Right, so this kind of assessment, it's not hard to create something like this. You just have to want to do it. You can change all those petals, you can change the focus, but this tells you something about our pedagogy, right? Online. Online, how do we humanize online so it's not just upload, download, do a quiz, right? And a little chat on the side. How do you make collaboration core? How do you make participating core? It's very hard to get people to participate in online teaching, right? Very, very hard. But we've created this assess as you go tool in order to do that. So I wanted to share that with you as one of the tools that we use. The other thing now that we've done most recently is we have a workflow. We always had this workflow, but we've added another dimension. So we start a project, right? A project. There's a draft that a student does. But now what we've done is after the first draft, we've inserted an AI review. So the student takes that draft, puts it into an AI. I'll give you a bit more information about that. And after they get the AI review, they revise their work, and then they get a human review, right, which moderates the AI review. Then that's revised, and then we have a change note, so our students are discussing the value of the AI and the human review, and then it gets sent off for publication, and it goes into their portfolio and into the class knowledge. Now, we've tried inserting the AI at different points, so we've also tried it after the peer review and before the peer review, and we'll try to test out when is the most efficient time to do it. So this is a workflow for all our students in our courses. But somebody talked about rubrics and how they love rubrics. It's done in a very structured kind of way, right? So the projects have extensive rubrics and extensive prompts. So the educator, you know, they say, oh, this is going to get rid of the teacher nonsense. The teacher's going to be more and more important as this technology becomes more central to what we're doing, because we have to scaffold the experience, right? And we have to be very explicit about the rubrics that we provide and the details that for writing projects or producing projects and assessing projects. So that's another dimension. But then what we have is the peer review, and peer review is core to our pedagogy. We believe that peers helping each other's, advising each other is as important as what the teacher does. But that has to be learned and that has to be valued. And initially, students resist that because they think it's the blind leading the blind. Why do I have to do this? And it takes quite some time to get peer review to be at the level it would be if you were doing a publication for a journal, right? And we're preparing them for that kind of scholarly work. So across using the rubric, they do the work. Using the rubric, they do the peer feedback. Using the rubric, we do the assessment. So the rubric plays a very key role. So in our learning model, we have, and I didn't show you this, but the space in which
I'll show an example now.
Oh, you'll show an example.
Yeah.
We have a multimodal text editor because we think all projects should be multimodal. If you're being prepared for the future, then knowing how to, the power of multimodality matters. Bill doesn't like me using this example, but I will. You remember Abu Ghraib, the prison in Iraq, remember the terrible prison in Iraq? Well, the Red Cross had written a tome about what was happening in that prison. A tome. It was online, anyone could read it. And it was there for a long time. Then somebody went into the prison with a camera and took one picture of the man with the hood and all the things coming off him, and the whole world reacted. Presidents, one picture. So the power of the image now, the fake image and the real image, is just as important as the printed word. So multimodality is really critical for us, and we want our learners to know how to produce, know how to decide, know the power of multimodality. So that's key to what to their project work, and we want them to think about what they're doing as they're producing their knowledge, and we want them to be able to represent their learning in an individual way. But on the other side, we want formative assessment as they go. We want them to reflect both in terms of what they think about the peer review and what they're doing, and of course, collaborative learning is key for us. Absolutely key.
Okay, I'll show you.
Now, Bill's going to show you something.
So Mary was talking in general terms there. I'm going to actually put this down for a second. I'm going to go out to the web. 5 minutes, easy. We've only got one section to go still, and we'll keep pushing forward. So let me just go out to the web, because I want to show you one example. So remember, Mary showed you the left side, right side architecture. I'm going to show you this live on the web, and then I'm going to show you the AI feedback and tell you how the AI feedback did what it did. So give me 1 second here, and I will go. Escape.
You tell him it was too long.
So let me put that here, and I've got a version of the slide. Here we go. So this is a piece of one of our students' work, and it happens to be a student that's writing a piece. And look, I didn't select this piece was particularly good or bad. It just arbitrarily was one that we had sitting there. And she is a teacher in Chicago working on community mural making as a multimodal experience. I'm going to show you the work first to show you what example. Remember the left-right architecture Mary was just talking about? So it's multimodal. They put in stuff about Dewey, they put in infographics, they put in a nice video about Diego Rivera, who's of course one of the great muralists. They put in a video about art design in Chicago. I'm just showing this to give you an example of the kind of work. Lots of references all the way through. There's Derrida, that's a good sign. Richard Rorty, another good sign. I'm kind of being facetious. John Dewey, this is the students actually doing their mural. This is, I'm scrolling just quickly to give you a sense of the scale. So this is a major project that she's done as part of her work. And And by the time we get to the end, you'll see that there's a reference to this. Okay, so it's a multimodal piece of work, which is everything you want in a student assignment. Now, what you see on the right here, which is kind of interesting, is you see an unusual rubric. So this is, I'll scroll all the way through it. Mary showed you the diagram, which was a simple top-level diagram, which is based on learning by design. But you can see, look, if you ever seen rubric prompts this long, so these are, one of the things that generative AI is very good with concepts, theory, reasoning, the logic you used in the thing, critique, how you be critical, applications, innovation, communication. So one of the things with generative AI is that if you give it verbose prompts, it gives you really good responses. So this is, you know, normally if you go on one page and there's a few little words and there's a lot, you embed it behind it. You can't embed anything with generative AI. You've got to actually make it all explicit. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you now the feedback that the machine created for this particular work. I need to now jump across to, I've done a dump into Adobe Acrobat because it's easier to read there. So this is the AI generated feedback against that. And I'll just go through it quickly to give you a sense of whatever. The essay Harvard is looking at presents a thorough explanation. There's a quick summary. And what we've done in here is the EXP plus, we've got these little codes in, which experiential plus, experiential minus. We've actually told them to be critical, right? So on this particular criterion, while the author offers insights into their motivation experiences, there is a missed opportunity to delve deeper. By the way, delve's a key word in generative AI. You can tell it's AI if it uses the word delve. I don't know why, it's a favourite word, but it is. The specific reflections that lead to murals and digital literacy. That's actually quite a good suggestion, to be quite frank. Relevance and importance, suggestions for improvement to enhance the connection of personal experience and motivation. I'm going to do this really quickly, but I just want to give you a sense of the scale of it. The author can incorporate a specific example of projects that the industry have done, challenges and successes. Right. The essays, we asked it to give ratings as well, and this is why it gives the ratings. And now we're on to the second of 10 criteria, right? Blah, 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 blah. While the essay, now this is in terms of evidence, while the essay excels in theoretical grounding and provision of some examples, it lacks detailed empirical data on the outcomes of these projects. And then we go down comparative studies, broad literature reviews, quantitative data, making a whole lot of suggestions here. And now we're up to item number 2, which is excels in defining visual literacy, but several critical concepts, which are multimedia learning and pragmatist aesthetics. These terms could be more explicit, right? Then we go down. No, it's not enough. No, it's not enough, because what I want to do is I want to show you. I'm going to go right to the end. Look, it says drawing on the work of John Dewey, Richard Stewart, and the mural mini making from Dr. Kalantzis. Now, how do our names come up in a large language model? So what I'm going to tell you, and I can keep on going. It's kind of and by the way, Mary will give you the answer to how it happens. But by the way, we're professors in a program where we know a pile of stuff, and we've got incredibly good students who are all teachers, highly experienced, and wonderful, wonderful work. Some of them are here. Thank you for coming. The end of the day. But look, I'm going to tell you this: I could never give this much feedback, and feedback that's this good. And this feedback took 10 minutes to generate, which is pretty slow as generative AI goes, and it cost $1 because, you know, you got to pay to get into the LLM. So Mary's going to tell you how we did it. But look, the message really is this could be a powerful tool. So we're getting them to do peer review, and we're getting them to compare what's different about the AI reviews to give a review. And there are real values in both of them. So I'll let Mary now.
How many minutes have got left?
5 minutes. It's 5 minutes.
Well, I'm going to go to why this is good feedback. And we have not asked our students to go to AI in what we call the wild, right? They're not going to ChatGPT and to the wild, because it is possible now. Yeah, that one. Okay. It is possible now to do what we've just done, right? What we have created is we have created a corpus that is possible to do using this retrieval augmented generation for RAG, a vector knowledge base. So we created a corpus which contains everything we've ever written, every other document that we have in our course, everything our students have written, because in Scholar we've kept them for the last 5 years. So we have a bounded corpus, right? So when we put in the prompts, you know, they don't go out there in the wild and get hallucinations and false data and false references. They actually go into a bounded corpus. Now, anyone can do that. You can do it for dancing, you can do it for law, you can do it for business. In fact, medicine is using corpuses like this. It's beginning to happen. It hasn't happened in education, but it has happened out there in the world. That you create, you know, the domain in which you want your students or whatever to go into. And that's why we get such extraordinary responses which are pertinent to the course.
Oh, look, and when I say, look, we're lucky to have research funding to be able to build things, and we're lucky to have a really great team, and we're lucky to have great AI developers working with us. So it's kind of not that straightforward and not that easy, but also what we're trying to do is experiment with what's possible.
What's possible, that's right. Now, I was just going to say, our data shows that initially the students didn't like the artificial intelligence.
No, they ranked really fine.
Right. But that was before we put it in the rank in our vector. But after that, you know.
Oh, and these are comparisons.
Different comparisons.
So what's interesting is they're very different. The human review and the machine review.
Well, I can't go through all that.
Yeah, don't.
Because it's too much. 1 hour. And then you can see here that once we built the corpus and they got better feedback, they did like it. Gabriel's husband produces data for us, so it's we're very happy for it. So the implications for the future, Brett, I'm just going to go to the last slide.
No, I'm going to very quickly go through all the slides that Mary, all the other slides Mary told me to delete. You mind? But I'll do it really quickly. And she was right, no, we should have deleted them. We've taken too long, haven't we? Yeah, so Mary's usually right about things, but I like these slides anyhow. So very quickly, artificial general intelligence, terrible idea. It's not going to happen. You know, it's within this technology does things we need to define its incredible capacities and its irretrievable limits. And that's what we tried to do in this talk. This man has lots of answers for. This man's name is John McCarthy. He's a foundational person in computer science who our AI developer keeps on telling me not to be too dismissive because he created some of the foundational aspects of computer programming. John McCarthy, 1955, created this idea of artificial intelligence. And actually, he put it on a funding proposal. I sympathise with this to try and get the money, and he got the money. And that's his definition of what artificial intelligence is. Our argument is that it's actually a terrible idea because these two forms of the machine operates in such a different way from human beings that it's kind of not replicable. It's not the same thing at all. It's something fundamentally different. You know, walking the street is different from driving a car. And this is the difference. And what we do, we like this word cyber. So, and it has a nice Greek origin, which is Kubernetes, which means kind of the Kubernetes is this man at the end here with the rudder, the oar that steers it. And what you do is you keep adjusting stuff. It's about feedback systems. It's not about replication. So our idea is feedback systems, not replication. So that's a kind of our idea. Again, this is one of the slides I had to delete. I love this little device here that I've circled in red, which is called the governor, right? So again, this idea of a machine which is partly self-governing, which looks after it, which does stuff for itself, is as old as Bolton Watts double acting steam engine of 1785. I'm a steam engine person, so this is why I have to say this. But in fact, what that does is that when the steam, there's not enough steam, it goes down like this, and it lets in more steam. It's a kind of a flywheel, and it falls in like that, and then when it goes back out again, it goes too far. So it's self-adjusting. The person in the machine doesn't have to keep adjusting the steam flow into the pump. And this is a pump for a mine in Cornwall. Yeah, it's too much. Okay, there you go. So this idea of machines with servo mechanisms, they're going to shut me down. And then this is what our key idea is, that about cyber-social learning is the relationship between two fundamentally different things. Yes, the machines are pretty damn clever. The most important thing is that the brain is more than binary. It's not like a calculating machine. But also we have a lot of meanings in our bodies, which are not just cognitive. And context to more than bodies. The meaning of what we do is in the kitchen, it's in walking down the street. So it's important that we actually try to understand the role specifically of these technologies. And these are some conclusions. I'm very proud of this. This was created by William H. Stebbins with the help from William H. more than that. And Midjourney H2, right? And what was really interesting about this is he likes eating lobster, which is unusual for a 7-year-old. We generated this picture together, which is really quite beautiful. What's interesting is the prompts kept pushing along the way. It was a dialogue which ended up with this beautiful picture. Now, what we're building now, just by way of which one? Which is what?
A message to all of you, right? A message to all of you. Broaden the definition of the written text. Finish. Right. Recognize that literacy is of necessity bottom, right? We have to be dialogical and interpretive, and it is about being so cyber-social. We have to talk about grammar again, but a new grammar, not the old grammar which was only for alphabetical literacy, and create new assessments. You know, the assessments cannot be the ones we have. Seize the day. All of you can do a little bit of what we've done, more of what we've done. We can do it. It's not just about being reactive. So do that, and we have to develop a program of educational justice. And all of you have spoken to some degree about the importance of that. How can we harness the affordances of this stuff for inclusion, for participation, for voice, for sharing, for collaborative learning, and for cyber-social relationships? We've got to finish.
We've got to finish, and what I'll do is I'll go to the very, very end. We're actually now, this is the last.
But no list.
But turn off. So this actually usefully.
I did nothing.
A whole lot of written things. So let me just see why.
It's gone there.
Is it back?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so we've been writing this up along the way, and Gabriella here has been a wonderful partner, and we've had a number of wonderful partners who are working with us, writing this up as we go. We're now building, so this is all in the Scholar environment, which you folks have also been in today in this bit called event. And what we're doing now, the latest thing we're doing, which is kind of slightly crazy, is building a new text editor where we're going to have AI embedded in the text editor. And what we want to do is we want to build an environment where we can see how you're using the AI, and it will track that. And the deal will be something like this. Okay, half the work can be yours, half can be the AI, but it's going to be twice as good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.